What is up, Star Wars Destiny fans? Welcome back to Cantina Brawl. This is episode 3 of our fun new podcast by T3 Gaming, and we are covering, of course, the awesome game that we call Star Wars Destiny. It's not just us that call it that, actually. I think the world officially calls it Star Wars Destiny. It's a dice and card game, and today we are going to talk about the Faction Identity episode part 2, about the villain characters. And my name is Symbio, and I'm joined today by my co-hosts Cooney and Nifty Nick. How's it going, guys?
Yo.
Yo, yo, yo.
Yo, 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 yo. It's not, dude, it's Monday night. You can't get too
right.
party.
That's the wrong energy for a Monday night. You're not wrong.
Yeah, man. Monday nights we're like, hey, what's up? What's up?
What's up, man?
You're lucky.
How you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
I don't think monotone's in my blood, though.
All right, well, today, even though it is a Monday, we have a very special guest all the way from freaking San Luis Obispo, California. We got Monk, the only one and only Monk from Monk's Gaming Battlefield. How's it going, man?
Hey, yo, everybody. Thanks for having me on. As always, man. Always a pleasure.
Yeah,
He's
man,
got the right attitude.
it's been hard to get this man on. He's so busy, you know. He's got family and he's got his whole own channel and Patreon to manage. You got to go check out his hashtag. Is it Tuesday yet? He's every Tuesday live streaming some of the best Star Wars Destiny on TTS. And then you're also doing a lot of in real life games now, which is pretty sick. I like seeing that. So yeah, can you tell people where to find you right now? Where the best place to like watch your sweet action is?
Everything's on YouTube and Twitch, man. It's very easy to look at Monk's Gaming Battlefield. And just check it out if you guys like it. If you guys like it, let me know. And then I'll keep doing it. That's all it is.
And and you got a Patreon with like some pretty cool like alt art prizes too, right?
Oh yeah. What was it? Parker Simpson did a freaking sweet item Versio. So if you guys want to check that out too. I have a whole lot of images on Facebooks and the Twitters and the Instagrams and things.
All that good
that
stuff.
You can check out there.
Right on. So yeah, definitely go check out MGB. He's got a lot to say. We're covering villains today. Last episode 2, we talked about the hero factions. And again, to kind of recap what we're talking about, factions, we are trying to help you guys understand a little bit about Star Wars Destiny factions. You've got your Force blue, you've got your Command red, and you've got your Rogue yellow, and those are the colors, and you've got heroes and villains. And we thought it'd be kind of cool to talk about, well, what do those factions mean and how do they play out or express themselves in this game? We're going to talk about a couple characters, couple upgrades, supports, and events for each color. And I invited Monk to share with us what he felt were some of the most representative blue villain cards. Monk, what do you feel like blue villains are all about in this game? Like, what do they do really well? How do they handle damage versus resources and control versus aggressiveness, that kind of stuff?
So in general with blue, they are all about damaging another character or themselves to get resources. Or damaging themselves to do more damage overall, which is, you know, the kind of dynamic of all thematic trash that you would see with Star Wars, right? It's no doing damage to somebody else to do more damage to do damage to an opponent. Same thing with Kylo Ren, trying to see, you know, kind of ruthlessness of himself kind of getting personified onto a freaking card. So
spoiler alert, like when he kills somebody that teaches him some stuff.
but no, I really think it's all the ruthless aggression that blue villains are really known for. I really wanted to notate, you know, another character on this, which everyone knows is my favorite character in the freaking game so far. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, who is that, man? Are you talking about? You're not talking about Jar Jar Binks, right?
Oh, that's exactly it. That's the grand old freaking Palpatine. So,
yes, Emperor
which
Palpatine.
there's a huge rumor that, well, it's not really a rumor. They already put it on an article, but new Palpatine coming out this next set. So,
really, is that for reals? I didn't.
That's for reals.
That is for reals. Yep.
Now, how did they actually refer to him in the article?
No, it straight up says new Palpatine.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
But who could that really be? I mean,
We're just not
Well,
sure
yeah,
if it's
there's
going
a
to be
version
another
of Palpatine that I'm very excited about. But the way they did Vader, if they do that with Palpatine again, I'm totally ecstatic.
He's gonna have like 20 health, 25 health.
30 points.
So yeah, okay, that makes sense. And Palp was super exciting in Spirit of Rebellion because he was the first like 28-point character you could play a one-man army. So and yeah,
still viable, Symbio, still viable. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt, man. If anybody's gonna make it work, you're gonna make it work, man. You're the master of the Palp.
We will see.
So let's look at Snoke here. Recently errataed Snoke, still very powerful. What does he do in this game that's like unique for blue villains?
So again, we're gonna refer back to the doing damage to somebody else to do more damage to your opponent. He is the most versatile blue villain character that Star Wars Destiny has. He's the ultimate support character. You can put him in every deck, and he makes that deck better no matter what it is, even with the point increase.
Yeah, I have no argument there, man. This guy's a beast. Just being able to deal a damage to any one of your characters to resolve their die, any side, increasing its value by 2 is humongous. Like, it's so versatile, right? So there's that. That's what you're talking about. That damage equals, like, you deal damage to yourself, and it makes you more powerful. That element of blue villain force users or Sith that essentially uses the anger and pain to draw from to make themselves more powerful.
Yeah, it's just freaking. Especially when you think of Snoke too. Anyone that actually knows like actual lore and stuff like that, they know he was like a ruthless leader, that type of thing. But at the same time too, like the only brief glimpse that you saw him actually in movies and all stuff too is, very, very brief. But it's nice to know how much power that Snoke might have had or really has still, hashtag spoiler or whatever the hell you want to say. But if they happen to bring him back in the new film.
Oh yeah, that's a possibility.
Please.
You've also got
rabble banter.
All right. We'll be the opposite. You can hope for him back in the movies, and I'll hope for him back in the meta.
No, but overall, like blue villains in general, just like Kylo, being able to reveal a card from that person's hand to try to see what color it is, being able to do extra damage just for having a presence known on the board is what blue villains is all about. And the fact that I use a majority of later on the events that go along with these individuals, especially melee blue villain characters, is very, very ruthless and can get very heavy damage very, very quickly.
I have to agree. I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think one of the new characters that kind of represents that sort of aggression and wild, power to me in this new set is Savage, who's very, if his brother's not there, here he comes swinging right away out of the gate. So it's a very aggressive style that some of these, particularly like you said, melee characters bring to the board.
Yeah, and another one that we want to like notate too is like Count Dooku, right? No matter what, every time he rolls out, he gets a melee side.
Right.
It's
very Dooku, right? Because he's a little bit more tactical. He's very not wise, but he's a little bit more experienced. So him having that consistency is very thematic, which I think is something that they nail for Force villains, especially where their cards feel very thematic to their characters, and I think they do that well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've got this Snoke being the leader of the Force, and you've got Palp, who's also a leader, and you've got, they can both be aggressive as well as controlling. While then you've, of course, got Darth Vader, one of the most iconic blue villain Force users, who is like just pure terror aggression. All right.
It's a new dynamic now because, especially when you really look at this too, because before Darth Vader showed up on Across the Galaxies, we had Snoke and Kylo, and one is, you know, one of the most sought after cards ever, and then one comes with a starter pack. So it's just amazing on what they're doing with Star Wars Destiny, and I just can't wait for the future of blue villain in general, especially, you know, since again Palpatine.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most exciting factions to play.
Yeah, I always look forward to the new blue villains. That's one of my favorite things to try out.
And we should also mention the other Darth Vader from Spirit of Rebellion, where he had a special that, you know, he did himself a damage in order to do more damage to a character too. So that was definitely very thematic with the whole, you know, kind of like, you know, making yourself more painful to do more damage. And there's like cards like anger and hate and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, anger, hate, and rage. Yeah.
So what do you guys think about resource? Like you see a lot of resource pay sides on blue villain, right? Is that something you think is part of that faction that's still being used in the faction? Because there's like the 4-for-1 pay on Vader, 3-for-1 pay on Dooku.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the kind of the cost of them using their anger as their power. So I think it's sort of thematic in that way, as far as, you know, giving them power, but they have to pay for it in some way. You know, in the shows and in the, you know, the different media, they pay for it sometimes very steeply, sometimes with, you know, injuries, losing limbs and such. Sometimes just emotionally, so they have to deal with those things, and so I think it's a bit thematic to see the pay sides on them.
Not only that, but it also helps in the game balance their actual strengths too.
Sure.
Yeah, very true. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to some upgrades. Monk, you picked some cool upgrades here. You want to talk about these upgrades and kind of how they fit into the faction?
Completely. Like, again, especially when you're talking about any blue anything hero or villain, they always have the most unique weapon size they can go on everything. Sorry, my wife just barged in.
Hey, what's up?
But for these, you know, the lightsabers themselves are so iconic in this game, and they kind of go hand in hand with the people that they're designed for. When you talk about the crossguard lightsaber, which everyone first thought that was going to be Kylo's lightsaber, right? But this thing itself, being attached to a certain characters, are able to do a damage right off the bat from attaching them. Just again adds to the ruthless aggression that blue villains have, as well as majority of them have just modifier sides, just again to add on further damage to whatever either pay sides that they currently have already, or just regular melee sides in general. So
that makes me wonder, do a lot I would say that a lot of the blue villains tend to have base damage sides, right? Like if you see a lot of hero blue characters, they tend to have a modifier side or can have a modifier side on their character. Is that, have you guys
That's an interesting note. I just looked through them. Yeah, this block that we're going into, their Savage is the only one with a modifier, and it's on his 4th damage side.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But if you look at every single one of the weapons, what do you see?
A lot of modifiers.
A lot of like high modifiers, right?
Yeah, so like Fifth Brother's lightsaber has 3 modifier sides on it. Darth Vader's lightsaber has 3 modifier sides on it.
Maul's has 3.
Yeah,
Maul's has
4, right?
No, 3. One of them is a base side.
Right.
Yeah, but still, yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
It's nuts, and all it is additive power. You know what I mean? And then the fact that, again, I don't even know how to really describe it because I'm at a loss for words. But it's just the fact that they're able to equip these weapons on, and then them spontaneously just doing extra damage, like Fifth Brother saber, Darth Vader saber, crossguard lightsaber, just for either equipping or resolving the die on them, just shows the power and the iconic image of the big blue villains.
It's really exciting, very ingenious, and props to FFG for really working the theme thematicness of this faction into their characters and their upgrades, because it just feels so good when you can throw a crossguard on Kylo, do an extra damage, or resolve Darth Vader's saber, do an extra damage. Is that whole aggressive element comes through.
And I like the fact that, especially in this game, they make it, again, iconic in the fact that, I'm going to keep using that word, but they made it, well, again, thematic in the sense of crossguard lightsaber being attached on the Kylo Ren does an extra damage to a character, but also has shield hate equipped into it as well, which you have someone that really relies on shields, like Rey in the starter set, that needs a shield on her to do a damage to somebody else. And again, Kylo kind of thwarting that in the same time is pretty, I don't even know, pretty damn ingenious on the creators.
Yeah, it definitely gives you that feeling of a really important battle, epic battle, right? When one is like directly countering the other one. So it can be really fun to play that game. So yeah, one thing I wanted to point out, what I thought was interesting, is that they started working in these two shield sides onto into the blue villains, which sort of bugged me as a hero blue player. Like Dooku, I think Dooku has a 2 shield side. He does, yes. Too, right?
Correct.
And I think ultimately they probably realize that these aggressive characters actually still need some defensive capabilities, otherwise they'll never get played.
Maybe. Right. They were all basically just glass cannons before. I mean, they if they didn't have any mitigation just from cards, they had to rely on other sources. There wasn't a whole lot of options.
Well, it's sort of interesting. I wasn't here last week to talk about the shields and how important that is to the the hero blue and their identity. Is that something that you guys think the shields are encroaching a little bit? Is that your emotion on that?
I think that's just me.
No.
Is that just you? Okay.
I think that's just me. I'm like, what is up with Vader having so many shields? But honestly, I think it makes sense. I mean, you see him in Empire. He's just like throwing stuff left and right. I mean, he can defend himself just as much as he can be aggressive. So I think that's fine. I think as long as it's kept, I think that it's not that it should be just reserved for Blue Hero, but I think because it's one of the strengths and unique faction identity components of Blue Hero, I don't want it to spill over to become too, used in Blue Villain. Because I like the fact Blue Villain's aggression. It's aggressiveness, it does more damage. You get more damage for the point value.
Right.
So, all right, let's go ahead and move on to some supports here, Monk. You picked some really awesome ones.
Yeah, so again, we're going to keep tailoring on Vader, even though I didn't pick Vader as a character. But let's just stop and think about this Vaders Fist for a second.
Broken.
Yeah, when you're able to roll a die out or have some type of power creep for 3 different times in the first turn you play it, there's something about the power of Vader. Like, when you really think about it, when you really go dive deep into this thing can do more damage than Vader does.
Yep. It happened. Yeah, if it rolls out 3 times, I mean, you can do 12 damage max indirect.
Stormtroopers can do more damage than Vader can from this support card.
Yeah, and just so for you audio listeners, we're talking about Vader's Fist, the unique 5-cost upgrade from across the galaxy. If you don't know about it, after you play it, you get to roll the die in the pool, and then you get a power action to roll it into your pool, and then you get its regular action to activate.
And it has no, again, it's
no
pure
blinks,
pure aggression again. You know what I mean? So majority of its sides is damage sides, 4 damage sides, 3 range for $1, 3 indirect, 4 indirect for $1, 3 disrupt, and 2 shields again, just for you, Symbio. But it's no blank side. So no matter what, you're going to get value for the die.
Yeah, and I mean, it's got pay sides, so you got to afford it to get it back to the die. But you're right; you're always going to roll something.
Especially when you equip this with, again, Vader, right? Which makes it even better because it has that power action. If you roll in the die, you can turn it to any side you want it to.
It's crazy.
on top of that, then you have Vader that has a 2 resource side. So no matter what, even if you want it, you can have whatever money you need to have to go along with it.
That's very interesting. So a lot of the to kind of dive into a recent topic, a lot of the Snoke Thrawn, a lot of it was, well, Vader's Fist turn 1 is very strong, and yeah, obviously. I'm sort of curious. So they went back on a couple of sabers and they threw a resource cost onto that power action. Is that something that would have reined Vader's Fist in a little bit? Pay a resource to roll this into your pool?
It would have slowed it down a little bit, but I don't think it would have really. I mean, I don't think it would have been that effective, but it would have slowed it down at least one action.
Okay. I'm just curious, because a lot of it was the TIE Fighters and the Vader's Fist, where you'd see 4 TIEs in one turn, or a Vader's Fist, and I don't know. It's interesting to see the, like you say, the creep on this card it's a very powerful card, and it fits very much into what we're talking about, the blue villain identity, where it's aggressive and pairing it with Vader is very dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it shows off the that there's 2 components of blue villain. One is that the characters themselves can be extremely aggressive and powerful, but as leaders within their army or empire, they can lead supports or soldiers that are even equally, and vehicles that are equally as powerful, right? So this is definitely probably the height of the amount of aggressive power in a card, right, Monk?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I'd rather see 4 TIE Fighters than than 1 Vader's Fist.
Sure,
agreed.
Yeah.
So it's just the scary amount of damage that certain villain supports are able to dish out, and it's really nice, especially when you go even back to Vader's TIE Fighter, right?
Yep, the Darth Vader's TIE Advanced.
Yeah, so that thing can do the damage as much as damage is currently equal onto a character on the special side.
Yeah, that can be as much as 6 or 8 or anything. So yeah, very, very powerful. There's also Kylo Ren Starfighter, which mirrors his ability in some ways, where it deals indirect for the colors in their hand. So yeah, the villain supports don't mess around. That's for sure.
Not at all.
And then what's the next one?
Yeah, and then I'm just spotting Darth Vader's meditation chamber. I think this is a very unutilized card. The fact you're able to heal a damage, get a card back from your discard pile, and then spotting Vader again, just the fact that is now the new set is very, it synchronizes very well with characters, and I absolutely love the direction that Star Wars Destiny is going with this.
Yeah, me too. I love that.
If you're able to spot that certain character, then you get an additional additive to it. And in this case, you get to draw a card too. So you get 3 different dynamics off of one action, not even a power action, to do. So it's not bad.
Right. And also I like the fact that it's Blue's sort of answer to Mill. It gives them that extra little advantage.
And I know that was like the biggest gripe from the last set. So
right. Yeah, this latest set did a lot of really cool cards like this, where you have unique interactions with certain characters, but also have abilities that are a little bit more dynamic and bring something extra to the board when you drop them.
Yeah, and I'd say this is actually very interesting and unique, because they didn't, before this, blue villain very rarely got any kind of healing outside of a neutral card. This is actually a blue villain specific card that does a little bit of healing. So, I think that's cool. It's an example of other elements of the game. Each faction sort of getting a little bit of something else. It's like they don't get absolutely no healing. They just don't get a ton of healing, like red heroes or something.
I'm hearing a gripe from Symbio.
Hey man, I gotta balance out these blue villains. They can't get it all. They can't be freaking aggressive and start healing. That wouldn't be right. All right, here we go. These are wow. These are the 2 of the most powerful.
We picked some doozies.
2 of the best blue cards villain.
Yeah. Go ahead, Monk.
All right. So first off, we're gonna start off with that healing factor. Don't forget they had Rise Again first.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's very true.
Never
Rise Again
mind,
and Dark Ritual now. So now they're rising from the dead as well.
They're rising from the dead, all healing.
They didn't get any of this little drip healing like field.
Right.
It was like a big 5 cost, you know, which I thought was cool, and it goes back again to Blue Villain having their own way of doing things, right?
Yeah, man. They go home. They go big or they go home.
You mean they die and then get risen from the grave?
Right. Well, that's home.
That too, yeah.
6 feet under is home to a blue villain.
Sure.
All right, but I had to choose. Like, I know we try to stick to the new set here, which let's hope to God that they reprint some type of version of Price of Failure. Hopefully, one that costs money this time. But but Price of Failure itself is so good and is very iconic to the nature of Blue Villain. They rather sacrifice something that, like a peon, like especially now these days, right? Either a Jawa, a Greedo, or a Bazine, right?
Yeah.
Poor Greedo.
Oh, yeah. And like completely knock them off the board to reactivate Darth Vader again to do more ridiculous damage in one turn.
It's so awesome, though. Like, that is how blue villains should be, right? Like,
yeah. Well, and it defined
yeah.
it defined a lot of decks. I mean, you even had like the one turn kill decks where you just reset with Seven Sister and really go just hard with the just roll out her dice and forget your stormtroopers, forget your whoever else you brought with you. So yeah, it's a very, very iconic card to a lot of styles of this game.
Yeah.
Just in case you don't know what the card is, it's the Price of Failure, and it basically just says spot a blue character, defeat one of your characters, any of your characters, to ready another character.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. And like when you think about what blue villains do in general in all Star Wars canon, it just goes hand in hand on the thought process about it. And I love the hell out of that card.
I still think that the art for that should have been Vader force choking or force holding a stormtrooper in front of him to take a shot. That would have been awesome.
And Monk, I'm sure you're having dreams or fantasies of being able to play Elite Palpatine with a character at some point. You could Price of Failure and bring Palp back, right, for one more turn.
Oh, we'll see at this regional.
All right. I mean, you can with the Way of the Force, right?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no way. No.
So and then next we got Fear and Dead Men.
All right. So this just again came out with Across the Galaxies and has been just sweeping the nation with Vader. The fact that you know for 2 cost, being able to swing your lightsaber and hit everybody with it, and then bring it back to him is just, again, a very thematic thing that you see in the canon movies and that you read about in the books. And, like, you just visualize it every single time for your Dead Man.
Yeah.
He goes and just slashes everyone with it. If you guys don't know what it is, it's resolve one of your dice showing melee damage for free against each one of your opponent's characters.
So
yeah, that bit was a bit overkill. I think could have left that.
So for again,
off.
those resource sides no longer matter with this card.
It does cost 2, but then it's like, it's Vader. It's a 2 for 8 basically, which is insane. Or 12 if you're going against a 3 wide, and it's one of my favorite cards of the new set. I would say, just because it's terrifying. Sitting across the board from Vader and you see that 4 roll out and they've got the money for it. You never know when it's going to hit you. So you always have to be aware of it. I always picture the end of Rogue One when someone plays this card. That's always just the visuals that play through my head. So yeah, I love this card.
Again, this is just an expression of the height of aggressiveness, right?
Oh yeah, this is, I think, peak aggressiveness. I don't know that we've had a card that's this aggressive before.
This is what we really needed, really, because again, we're looking, single character, big little decks, all right, and they didn't really feel like they should be. You know what I mean? You look at the old Darth Vader, the old well, Palpatine did pretty damn good, but like the very iconic characters, they weren't really standoffish until now with Darth Vader, with the iconic cards that go with him, like Fear of Dead Man, Darth Vader's meditation chamber, all this kind of stuff, all into one. And I think Across the Galaxy just brought a whole new level to this game. And I'm hyped up for what they have in store in the future.
Yeah, and that's what we want to see. We want to see these iconic characters do well in the meta as well as the casual circuit, where they actually feel like as powerful as they should be. So it shouldn't be like Bala and a stormtrooper taking down a Vader, you know.
I'm curious, if Red Heroes had this card, do you think K2 would be playable?
Well,
oh god.
I sort of wondered this as well, because I often think longingly about Mace Windu's 22 points and how they are bad. And I've been looking at this card going, if this existed for Heroes, would Mace be worthwhile? And I think it would. I think this is a game changer card that, like Monk's been saying, it makes the big little worthwhile because it's really, really dangerous now.
Right.
You just have to draft with ATG and
there you go. Problem solved.
That's the answer for everything. But I would like to say something about that whole draft dynamic. All right. So if you go and draft, you'll probably only have one of that card in your whole box.
Yeah, for sure. So not only do you have to draft Mace, you also have to draft Fear and Dead Men, and you got to draw it.
Okay.
Right.
Draft every day until this happens for me.
Yeah, that's a dream. Hey man, we gotta have dreams.
Yeah.
Keep dreaming, man. All right, so well, just to wrap up Blue Villains a little bit. Would you say that if you're a new player or you want to get into this card game and you like the people that like to play Blue Villains in general, like they like aggressive decks, like what would you kind of sum up like why you would want Blue Villain in your deck?
Damage.
Yeah, damage is really it is badass. It's fun, man. Like I play a variety of decks, and every time I come back to Blue Villain, it's just always a blast. I think they really capture the whole identity pretty well. So I always have a blast playing.
Yeah, if you want to feel like Kylo, if you want to feel like if you want to feel
anger
like
and hate.
Yeah, if you want to feel that, it's personified on everything that they're doing right now with the game. Yeah, and again, it all starts out with that starter set that you could easily get with Kylo.
Yeah.
I want to add, if you want to be Kylo before he takes off his helmet.
Yeah, totally. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the command villains, red villains. I'm going to need a little help with this from you guys, too. I don't play a huge amount of red villains, and we're going to go ahead and talk about two characters. First, we've got Grand Moff Tarkin, legendary from Legacies. Some of the elements of what I feel like red villain does very well is as these leaders. They've got two components I saw. One is the leadership. You've got the generals like Thrawn, like Tarkin, like Wolf, Hux even. And essentially they've got these focus sides or power actions that allow you to do damage or bring out supports. Sometimes they have mill power, but it's really about control, focus sides, being able to get your soldiers onto the table and do more damage with them. And then you've got the soldiers, basically the super efficient, cheap point cost, but they do damage. They do a lot of damage, and the more you have on the board, the more damage they're going to do. And an example of that is like the First Order Stormtrooper, which is getting reprinted for the first time in conversions. And then you've got like Battle Droid is another example. But yeah, I mean, I think red villains, they tend to be able to make a pretty good amount of resources, and they have a good combination of focus sides and discard sides. And in Tarkin, what's is interesting about him is just him being able to do indirect damage just by like being able to do damage through another means outside of just dice and or direct damage. That's another element of, I think, villains. But what do you guys think about red villains?
It's all command, man. It's that, I don't know, like I like to say, oppressive power that they bring. Every single one of them have some type of mind game with them, which is really nice, especially with you know, they're known first order stormtroopers. You know, the very low level heavy hitters. If they hit, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of missing, really, which is good too, right?
Oh, completely.
Yeah,
I just like the iconic image that First Order Stormtroopers bring out again.
Yeah, well, I think you captured it very well, Symbio, when you were talking about where we have these leaders that are, you know, a little bit more about focus, about some, you know, discard and, you know, making plans, laying traps, and then we have kind of these more grunt type characters where they're lower down them on the chain, so they're aggressive, they're a little bit, you know, more militaristic. And so they need a little bit of that leadership to focus them and guide them in the right direction. So they kind of pair off fairly well as far as, you know, matching them together. I like playing a little mono red villain. I think a lot of their cards, you know, are very, very cool together. And they build their boards, I think, more than blue villains. I guess if we wanted to identify a difference off the bat, I would say that when I think about red, in general, I think about, you know, adding more and more things to my board until I'm at a point that I feel comfortable winning, you know? So red villain's cool.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation of it. I think also, like, Monk, what you were saying, I really liked what you said about it being like a mind game, because that is totally dead on. Like, if you're playing against Thrawn, you're playing against Tarkin, playing against Wolf, I mean, those are the leader components. It's really like a mind game, and some of the best Destiny of just like anticipating what the opponent's going to do. Are they going to get those two symbols to line up so you can do the 4 damage? What number are you going to pull out of my hand? So if you really like that really thinky Destiny, I think Red Villain is where that's at.
Yeah, it's very tactical, just like the Empire and the leadership that they bring. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think another notable one is like Hux and stuff like that too. Just their thing that they have with vehicles as well. So all the great villain vehicles and all that stuff are drummed from red, majority of. And the fact that they're so, like, just like you're saying, militaristic, right? Mm-hmm. Very military oriented, very strategic, very tactical. Just kind of sums up what all red is about.
Yeah, and they have like the biggest weapons, the most powerful weapons, and so they have to be able to make the resources to be able to or cheat those weapons out somehow.
Right. They're dropping ATSTs, they're playing bombardments, they're very, you know, building to these big, massive, grand attacks, which I think is very, very fitting for them.
Yeah, so Nick, even though I picked these, maybe you can help talk a little bit about these, and because it was interesting looking at red upgrades. There aren't there aren't a lot of them, and they aren't usually particular. Like, there's a couple weapons in there, like Callus's bow rifle, random things like that. But then you've got these cards, these big cards like Grand Moff, which, like, you know, help the leadership, right?
Yeah, so you've picked some good ones here. So we got Grand Moff, which is a title upgrade. With no blanks on it, which we were talking about earlier with Vaders Fist, is always a bonus. That's always a good die you want to have in your pool. You can attach this to a unique red character, and it has a power action to use the claim ability on the battlefield or switch the battlefield with one that's not being used. It does cost 4 to get out, but like you were saying, red villain, you do want to be making some extra resources here and there so that you can afford something like this. Grand Moff recently was, of course, part of the Thrawn Tarkin. Some of them ran it to discard more cards from their hand using a different battlefield. A very, very control-y dice. I mean, no matter how you roll it, you're going to get value on this. I mean, 2 focus, 3 focus is insane on a die. So when you roll that out, you know what you're getting. And then you've also chosen the Fragmentation Grenade, which is a 1-cost upgrade that has a 1 indirect, 1 indirect, 1 indirect, 2 indirect, and 3 indirect. And you have to discard it unless you pay a resource after you resolve it. So it's a very impactful one, and I think this pairs well with the characters that you chose, especially Tarkin, where you can play this for 1 cost, and you kind of guarantee that you're going to have an indirect side to pair off with his power action. So a very strong grenade for sure. So yeah, and I think it plays into what I was talking about with both the bigger things and also the smaller kind of building your board as you go style for red villains.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to some pretty nasty supports. Red Villain, like we said, plays some of the heaviest, or if not the heaviest, supports on the table. Monk, you want to talk a little bit about these? You're probably pretty familiar with these, right?
Oh, honestly, I never really dealt with it because, for one, I didn't get my second planetary bombardment until very recently.
Okay.
But in general, these are so damn oppressive. Not so much with separate landing craft, because a lot of people try and experiment with those, especially with the five wide droids.
Right.
We haven't seen in quite some time.
It's tough.
But planetary bombardment was the Snoke Tarkin or Snoke Thrawn instant card for it to come out, and was why, in general, that pairing was so epic and why it's still controlling today. But it's not really running it anymore just because of, again, Vaders Fist and all that stuff too. But yeah. Planetary Bombardment was the very first card that actually had a 7 damage side on it.
Yeah.
And it was the thing that Way of the Force brought to the game, which they spoiled upon saying that there's going to be one that came out with the biggest damage side on it. And God, this thing is oppressive. Being able to ambush out, being able to possibly do extra damage with tactical mastery, that type of thing, 7 indirect is no joke.
Yeah, and then on top of that, a big damage sides on the dice, you get even more indirect damage based on the number of other vehicles you can spot, right? So that's pretty just, salt in the wound.
Yeah, so let's just say again, you had a strategic planning through this, very tactical, right? So you got your 4 TIE fighters already out. You have a Hellfire droid cannon. All this stuff's already doing damage, and then you bring out this thing that does 4 or 5 more indirect. It's
just by
ridiculous.
Playing it, right?
Just by playing it. Yep, it's an epic card for sure. And
let me roll out a 7 indirect as well. Why not?
Yep. Yeah. It's a game changer. It's one of those things that enabled, Snoke Thrawn to be looking like they're losing the whole game, and then in one round, it's done. They just drop out 15 indirect damage, and it's very, very fitting, I think, for Red Villain to have that sort of tactical edge, laying your trap, and then all of the Star Destroyers come out of hyperspace, and suddenly, oh crap, we're in trouble.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. All of a sudden, out of hyperspace, you've got these huge Imperial cruisers in your face, and it's game over. And that's what it feels like. They build up the board, like you were saying, to the point where they will win no matter what, and that is a very Red Villain empire.
Yeah, I love the cinematic nature of it. Again, just being able to picture all these things happening to you in a cinematic format is why I absolutely love Star Wars Destiny.
Yeah,
it's very, very fun. I'd love to get animated, battles of some of the matches that we've played, because it'd be very exciting to see how Obi-Wan deals with a planetary bombardment and stuff like that.
Dude, deflect. No,
I know. I would love
bounces it right back up.
Or no, it's the Force. The Force is with me. That's how he does it. The Force is with me.
It'd be very epic to witness those things, but. Yeah, no, and I think, this card only supports kind of what we've been talking about with the board building of Red Villain, where you are rewarded for your board by also being able to deal indirect. So, yeah, It's a very
Symbiote. I think you hit the nail on the head with the Separatist Landing Craft about always wanting to mass up a huge army as well. And Separatist Landing Craft was the very first support in the game that was actually able to generate another character for you.
Yeah.
And the only one still, right?
Yeah, and it's sad because I think that mechanic is really cool. Just the swarm element of Red Villain. You got the 5 wide battle droids. You've got 4 wide stormtroopers. And that really hasn't presented itself to be that powerful of game mechanic yet, which I'd like to see them explore more of. I think maybe it may be something that might make people feel bad if you just get too much like recursion of characters, just they're coming out on the board and you can't stop them. But I also feel like that's a component of the game that would be really fun.
Yeah, again, it goes back to the thematic nature of what the droids do. They're supposed to be ever massing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their nonstop nature, and yeah, you killed one, but here's 2 more aspect is exactly what it's known for. And they did that kind of, but they can do so much more with something with that type of support. But that support right there was something that everyone tried to experiment with and try to get cracking. And right now
remember
snow decks, right?
We got some armored reinforcement
extra
now.
Health on the board, get that extra droid just to survive out. So
yeah, I was just about saying that we do have the armored reinforcement plot now that you could use to pull up a Separatist landing craft first turn if you wanted to just start generating droids. But unfortunately, it gets discarded, so you'd have to figure out how to get that back out, right?
You just run the plot, or not the plot, the battlefield.
Yeah. There's docking bay. There's
Oh yeah, that's right. You just docking bay it back out.
Yeah.
Docking bay.
I'll see you guys later. I'm gonna go work on that deck.
Well,
all right, so we are sorry. We're gonna try to move on here. We're trying to keep this under 45 minutes or so. We're gonna move.
We
into
are
the events.
failing.
Yeah, we are, because it's so fun to talk about this stuff. Actually, I love it. So we got 2 events, Red Villain events I picked here. The first one is Probe, which is one of the oldest Awakenings events. I just feel like it's awesome. It's an awesome representation of what Red Villain does to disrupt your ability to mitigate them. It looks at 2 random cards in an opponent's hand, discards any of those cards that are events. I hope we see a reprint of this. I feel like it's a cool card that's not overbalanced or not too powerful, but very good card. And then we've got this other red villain event called Scorched Earth, which is a 2 cost. You don't see it that much anymore, but when Legacies first dropped, it was a really fun card to play, and I hated this card because what it did is if they control the battlefield, it does indirect damage to you based on the number of dice in your pool. So, like, you don't even see it coming. You've got all your characters rolled out. You think you're super fast, and all of a sudden they lay down Scorched Earth, and you just take damage to the face,
Yeah, Kai beat me by playing a Scorched Earth into 7 indirect, I believe. That was a crushing moment in my Destiny career, for sure.
Yep, I feel that, man. It's happened to me so many times, and I just feel like that surprise damage is red villain surprise damage,
Yeah, well, and a lot of their cards bring that indirect, right? So there's Shrapnel Blast as well, right, where there's dealing indirect and then getting bonuses along with it. So a lot of their new direction with the Red Villain events is, being a little bit disruptive, but also having some damage along with it, which I think is very exciting for Red Villain.
Do you guys have anything else about, what do you think of Probe? Like, you think they're going to get a reprint of that? You think it's a good representation of Red Villain, kind of sort of mitigation?
They should.
I think it's likely that we'll see something similar to it. I think it might need a cost on it this time. I think Probe in itself is a very, very useful card for 0 cost to just be able to pick out a couple cards from the hand. And even if you don't get mitigation, you get to see them. So I think maybe for a 1 cost, we could see something like a Probe return. I wouldn't be upset about it. I like that card a lot.
Yeah, I think like even just reducing it to 1 card would be still pretty damn good, especially for 0 cost.
Right.
But the fact that, again, iconic nature, right? So bringing back to the films, and seeing, you know, a probe droid scouting out first and trying to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah.
To go down and strike down your foes. You know what I mean?
Right.
I love the hell out of it.
And there's also one we didn't mention, which is another great card from Awakenings called the Best Defense, which basically takes 3 damage on one of your red characters, kind of throws out your cannon fodder, you know, those kinds of cards, which I think are really a unique element of Red Villain.
Yeah, I think inevitable that we see that reprinted, if not in this set, in the next one for sure.
Yep.
Would you want? Oh, never mind. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, would you want it reprinted the way it is?
Pretty close to it, I would say. I don't know.
It's very powerful.
I don't know. It's very powerful. Maybe give it a little more damage on it to deal 4 to remove 2 or something like that. But I think Red Villain sort of needs that. Like the only multi-die removal that Red Villain has right now is that new imposing presence, and your opponent has to be completely out of cards for you to get the full value. So I think multi-die removal is important to keeping certain things in check in the game. So as long as it's balanced right, I think 3 damage seemed about right at the time, but maybe with how much damage has gone up on some of the cards, maybe it goes up to 4. Maybe it's a 2-cost event instead. I don't know, but I think it's important that Red gets something like that soon to keep it relevant.
Yep.
Red Villain, I should say.
So yeah, kind of wrapping up Red Villains, you know, very tactical, militaristic, the highest damage sides in the game, very, very efficient supports and vehicles, a lot of control elements in there too. So,
and I think I should add, kind of hard to play in some situations. A lot of them take more knowledge of the game. You know, Thrawn was not a character that you could just like throw out numbers and win. You wanted to be aware of your opponents, and I think a lot of their cards in general take good timing and good practice to get their full value, which I think is good for them.
Yep. Well said.
Agreed.
Okay, let's move on to some the Yellow Villain Scoundrels, the Rogue faction here. I'm going to turn it over to Cooney to talk a little bit about what he feels like he picked these for us to talk about. What are the mechanics of what make Yellow Villains Yellow Villains?
So the reason I am certainly enjoying Yellow Villain play right now, and even slightly before this came out, is because Yellow Villain's all about resource denial and punishment. Now, by punishment, I mean it can go different ways. Like, for example, I'll just go cross back and forth with Beckett. You know, if you have exactly 1 resource, I'm going to take your resource and gain another resource. And that power action also plays into it, so you can force an opponent to get a resource after they've claimed, so they can't do anything with that. So you can generate resources like crazy. And then we have DJ. Punishment is every time you try to remove one of their dice, they're going to deal a damage back to you for it.
Yep.
That's just the way that Yellow Villains work. They have average health for the majority of them, and I just love the diversity. Like, I love the fact that if you try to do something to me, I'm gonna just kick it right back in your face.
Yeah. I really appreciate Yellow Villain in the sense that I think Yellow Villain is where some of the more creative characters exist. Some of them aren't great. Some of them are just, you know, purely for fun. But you have characters like Bib Fortuna, where, you know, he's enabling you to roll out again. It's another character's dice, which is insane. And they bring a lot of variety, where you have like Dr. Afra reducing the cost of droids, Greedo with his iconic Last Stand ability. So you have these really kind of unique characters that all fit into this sort of scoundrel umbrella, but they all do very unique things. And I think that kind of shows their nature a bit, where they're all a little bit, you know, for themselves, or out to be their own little one-man army. And they, in this new set especially, like you've pointed out here, they pack a punch and they punish you for it.
Right. I also like how they have pretty average to high damage sides too. So generally they won't have more than 2 damage sides on a die. but it's just that they have the damage plus utility to go along with.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is Yellow Villain does have quite a variety of types of characters, like you said. You've got Jabba, you know, you've got bounty hunters like Boba Fett, IG-88. Yeah. So you have some that are really aggressive, but they all, like you said, do kind of a unique thing. And similar to what we talked about in the Yellow faction is they tend to have tricks, like really interesting ways that they might break the game a little bit or do something that nobody else does in the game. That's very unique to them, and I think that's part of what Yellow brings to the table. And then the villain element of it is that a lot of times it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt you either by taking your money or you're going to take extra damage on top of it, you know, or they're going to mill your cards at the same time, you know.
It's so good because they, you know, they're mercenaries by card, by trade, by some cinematic value, and I think they got it spot on with this whole faction.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, it's fun. I think a lot of people like to play Yellow Villain, you know, because their theme matches the mechanics that the game designers have created. So
yeah, well, and I kind of just want to throw out, I mean, we get to each of these factions and we're all just kind of like, yeah, they nailed it. This is really awesome. And that's part of the pull, for me at least, for Star Wars Destiny, is that this is a part of it. That when I pick Yellow Villain, I'm choosing to align myself with these characters and with these abilities and their history, and the game supports my role play of that. So I think that it's important for us to identify what about these things is fun mechanically, but it also it's important for the game that it ties back to Star Wars, which is something that's very important, you know, in all our lives. Yeah, because
how many of us would be playing this game if it wasn't Star Wars? I mean, I know.
Yeah,
I probably.
I can't. I honestly can't. I might be playing it, you know, at a much lesser degree if it was a different theme, because I do enjoy the mechanics of it, but I wouldn't have picked it up if it wasn't Star Wars. And the fact that it reinforces itself so well, I think is why it's held the test of time, for me at least, these last couple of years.
Yeah, it keeps its thematic sense through every faction that they have.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some upgrades here and Yellow Villain upgrades.
All right, so in the last video, I mentioned that Yellow is very tricksy, as you said earlier. And I also mentioned here that they tend to punish you if you don't have any resources. So I'll go into Tobias Beckett's rifle. Now, this is new, of course, goes with Tobias Beckett. If you want me to put it on anybody, but the extra effect of just by playing the rifle on Beckett, you force the opponent to lose a resource.
It feels bad, folks. Let me tell you, from personal experience, it sucks.
Turn one with Thieves Palace on this, it hurts the opponent. It slows them down dramatically. And then, of course, the special, as I said, deals 2 damage to an opponent's character, or 3 damage instead if that opponent has no resource. Just the synergy with all of the yellow cards to their characters, or even other characters in general, is just so satisfying. So and then we also have the grappling bow, which I actually put in there because I know it's Symbio's favorite yellow card now.
Well, only because I can play it in a hero deck with Leia.
Right. But then it goes along with the whole punishment thing. It may not do a lot of damage, but the added effect of being able to remove an opponent's character die is insane. Is huge. Anything that removes something passively. I said the same thing in the review of that blue weapon,
the stun baton.
No, right? The sickle.
The sickle.
Oh, the chain
sickle. Yeah, it's just, anything that has a passive removal effect is huge if you can get it to go off. And with this one only having one blank side, it's super huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sickle rerolls dice, but just so people don't yell at us. But yeah. No, I agree. I am on board with dealing damage and doing additional things for sure. If you watch the other T3 videos, you saw Grappling Boa completely annihilate Snoke Thrawn the other week here, and I am definitely I am wary of this card now when it hits the board. It's a very strong card.
It's the only time in Destiny where you feel like it's okay to resolve that one melee side.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And I still think right now, like, it's still underutilized too, which is and I love the hell out of that.
All right, let's move on to some supports, and we've got a couple supports here. Cooney, you want to talk about those?
Right. So I divided this in two different styles. So the first one's Deja Vu, and we all know how broken this card is.
So
anything that allows you to recur stuff, especially from the discard pile, is insane. We have not how many we've only seen this in events. We haven't seen this in any type of support or upgrade base as from till now. So
there was Cheat, which was a neutral, which pulled a card out of your discard pile, but there's nothing like this quite where you don't have to pay for it. Oh no, you do have to pay for it.
You do have to pay for it. Is Cheat an support?
No,
Cheat is not a support.
Yeah, it's an event. Yeah, because we also had
there isn't something that you can keep doing it. That's what you're saying.
Right. I mean, we do have the hero variant, which is the Rebel, yes, but nothing to the recurring, like constant recurring for this, because this just makes decks like really a big threat once this hits the table. And then I have other options. Now this does kind of fall in line to the whole punishment thing, like we did talk about with the blue villains as well, but the synergy with like 000 and BT, it's just it's harsh. And Afra, it's you do 1 damage to yourself to deal 2 or 3 back to your opponent. It is definitely a better trade-off. So as I said, it's punishment to the best possible what's that called? The best possible situation for yourself.
That sounds right.
You got
something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a yellow villain, again, like Deja Vu, doing something that's pretty unique and like you said, tricksy. It's just not like anything else out there. And especially with the mitigation, it can be very powerful playing 2 hidden motives or, 2 of any card, 2 of probe, whatever, it just hurts when you see it. So yeah. I mean, there's some other obviously yellow villain vehicles that we're not talking about, but because there's some really good ones, like the new Fire Spray just came.
Well, there's some iconic ones, right? You got like Houndstooth, and you got Slave One, Afra's Archangel, and like you said, Fire Spray. You also got Sebulba's Pod Racer, which I think is a pretty cool one. Not quite as impactful as Anakin's in some senses, but still a pretty decent die on that. So I think yellow. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, what do you think those vehicles do that's different for yellow villains that maybe red or hero vehicles?
I think that's the tricky thing is I don't know that they keep up. I think the Fire Spray is probably the first one that we've had in a bit. The Slave One saw some play, but I think the Fire Spray is probably the biggest yellow vehicle that you could drop as far as impact, and it's still just kind of okay. It's definitely a solid card. The free mod per turn is great, but I think you kind of nailed it when you're competing with racing against some of these aggro decks. It's not quite big enough, but it's interesting, and they all bring little unique aspects to them, which is fun to toy around with. So yeah. I think they're
like Houndstooth was always fun. I always wanted to play that more. Just having like a 4 for 2 cost resource side was pretty exciting.
Yeah, and it was fun to mess around with that kind of a support to try and combine it with, as we transition into events, something like Anarchy or something like that to get some tricky plays off.
It was it was really nice back in the day, back of Thrawn car days.
Yep. Oh, that's right. We even forgot to mention old Unkar, who's like which I think thematically is one of the best cards until he got freaking nerfed,
Oh, he got nerfed hard, though. Yeah. He got unplayable hard.
So sad.
Yeah. Poor Simon Pegg.
Rip.
But it's so good, and like just like you guys are saying, is like they're unique. They are their own standoffish thing, and it's the same thing with these supports. Like the Houndstooth goes very well with the very controlly, resource-hungry decks, and just trying to protect yourself while gaining as much resources in the process is what yellow is all about. And like those again, like don't forget the very notatable freaking backup muscle that everyone
Oh
loves.
my god, how could I forget backup
Right.
muscle? Yeah, that's like a must-play card.
And salvage stand. So those ones are just very, very iconic, especially for Star Wars Destiny. So anyone that wants to have any type of control deck, or at least a fierce deck, has backup muscle in it, especially if you have a yellow villain in it at all.
How would you rate the yellow villains against red villains as far as like difficulty to play?
No, I think red or yellow villain upgrades are a lot easier to play. That's from my point of view. Because for me, I absolutely love just controlling people's hands and or resources.
Yeah.
Or just mind gaming them in general with a backup muscle that you can easily do one unblockable damage anytime that you want to do.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because just like the characters, a lot of their synergies are sort of within themselves. So you can just kind of play the card on its own. You don't have to like do some kind of crazy wombo combo. It's just you get to do a fun thing, but it doesn't need more things to kind of ramp it up, which is fun. So it's a bit straightforward in that way.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a couple events here that we're going to finish off with for yellow villains. Some of the most powerful events that are available in Star Wars Destiny are in yellow villain.
Yes. So I picked out these two for particular reasons. One, Delve, if you don't know what it does, deals one indirect damage to yourself to play a support or upgrade from your hand for free. Now, I was going to include Streetwise into this. It is a neutral though, but anytime you can get cost reduction off of stuff as well, it's very nice. Red knows all about that. But essentially, you can play Delve for 2 resources and get out a 5 or 6 or 7 cost support or upgrade out of your hand for free. It's really nice, and it, as I said, it adds to the whole tricksiness of yellow in general. So.
Yeah, and combines well with Dr. Aphra, who's featured prominently on that card.
Right. Get that extra reduction. So
yeah,
well, you get to draw a card when you deal indirect with her. So you get to play this, play your
Double
support,
synergy.
draw a card. It all kind of stacks up in these fun, sometimes hard to keep track of chains of events.
Right. Second card, it's my new favorite card from Event Yellow, and the reason why is because it's one of the only other counters to current dominating Vader. Well, I say dominating loosely, but really hard hitting Vader. Essentially, what this does is each character dice showing damage deal damage equal to its value to its matching character. So if Vader rolls out 2 of those 4s, well, he just smacked himself for 8 for free.
Yeah, we're talking about wanton destruction here.
Wanton destruction. There you go. So yeah, again, the whole reversal. I love the utility that it brings, especially the aggressive utility that yellow villain brings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dream situation. Deja vu's on the board. You have 6 resources. Vader rolls out 8 damage, and you completely annihilate him. That's dream.
I have seen it done. I have actually seen it done once.
Exciting.
It is that art his BT in there. It's just like destroying everything, and it's great. That's very yellow villain.
I still think that's one of the best arts in this game so far.
Oh,
it's really fun.
If that was a regional playmat, I don't know which one I'd rather have, Fear and Dead Men or that one. That would be a tough call. So.
As far as yellow villain events in general and kind of their style, so to me, yellow brings a bit of speed, which I think is important. Doing extra actions, doing extra little things here and there, the drawing a card when you play the event. And I also like Yellow Villain in particular because it brings up a lot of interesting decisions that your opponent has to make. So you have to make them think about that. And the more decisions you make them make, the more likely they'll make the wrong decision at some point in a match. So you have things like sticky situation or quarrel, where you're forcing your opponent to make a choice on which negative thing do you want this turn. And so you're keeping them kind of on the back foot as far as their thoughts are concerned. So I think Yellow Villain for me has some really mentally impactful events, which is fun.
Yeah. I kind of follow through with that, but at the same time too, for me, like my interpretation of my villain events is the fact that like villains are crazy sneaky in yellow.
Mm-hmm.
So it does like stuff like he doesn't like you, or bait and switches.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and that's that speed I'm talking about, where you have that extra little cheat to get across the finish line.
Out of nowhere, out of nowhere, sneaky death.
Yeah, and it
stab you in the back.
Exactly, and it, it goes hand in hand with like Boba, with all his craziness that he can do, especially with that against a Darth Vader. Just saying.
Yeah,
true.
Casually throwing that out
to your face.
Yeah,
and it's just really good. And then going with kind of like the backup muscle aspect, having friends in low and friends in high places.
Right. They have the diversity of effects to be able to control I say battlefield, but not literally.
Control the board. Yeah.
Control the board in many different ways. So.
Yeah, so I mean, finishing off with Yellow Villain faction identity, I thought it was interesting to explore a little bit about, since Yellow tends to be the one that I guess sits in the middle between being a hero and a villain, like being a rogue or scoundrel, being a bounty hunter, or living on the outer rim. You're not really a hero or a villain a lot of times. So what makes villains and heroes different a little bit? Like you got Lando and Han, you got the neutral characters, like the new Han Solo, Kira, Hondo, and then you got the villains like Dryden Voss, like Boba Fett. So thought it'd be kind of fun to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I think my take on Yellow Hero versus Yellow Villain is, like we've been talking about, the Yellow Villains are a little bit sneaky. They have these sort of cheesy little ways to sneak out more damage. Whereas to me, Yellow Hero is sort of more about, overcoming some odds. I think Yellow Hero has a little bit more gambling sort of built into it. You have to roll the right things or call the right things. There's a lot of events that are like, re-roll this card and re-roll this dice, and if it rolls the right thing, then you get to do extra things. So I think the difference to me is a little bit how they approach their sneakiness, whereas I think Yellow Hero is a little bit more about taking some gambles, and Yellow Villain is a little bit more about making precise backdoor attempts at things, which I think it's a fun little back and forth they have.
I'll bounce off that. So essentially for me, I believe Yellow Hero are all about the build-up. Whereas the Yellow Villains are all about the just aggressiveness with, as you said, those little trick cards that allow them to get that extra burst out.
Right, that instant gratification versus, the longer plan.
Exactly.
Well, Yellow Heroes make more money, I think, overall than Yellow Villains, but Yellow. Yeah, well, true. I mean, he takes money, and Hondo will take money from you, but it's funny, they give you a choice. You either take damage or you take money, So, it's interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I guess finishing off, like, what do you, out of these three factions, what are your guys' favorites? If you had to pick a faction.
Oh, don't make me choose.
Right now, I have to say Yellow Villain right now. Just right now.
I'll be the third. I do enjoy me some Red Villain. I think just because of the fact that it takes a bit of practice and not to say the other ones are easier to play or anything, but I find Red Villain the most rewarding of the three when it comes off. So I enjoy me some red villain. So we'll have the full rainbow in our discussion.
Oh, I just want to point out real quick. I made a slight error on DJ. It's whenever you remove dice. So yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it's essentially playing off their whole controlling the board thing.
Yeah,
so.
DJ is some of my least favorite matches I've played are against DJs who are just like, here's all your dice just removed. Also, take 6 indirect, and I'm like, oh, wow.
Fun game.
Yeah,
there's definitely a lot of feel bad moments with DJ in the room.
Yeah, he's a tricky one.
And
but
Monk,
I think he's important for the game.
Do I even have to ask you what your favorite is, Monk?
Oh yeah, it's Palpatine. Oh wait, what's the question again?
It's not even blue villain.
It's not blue villain. It's just Palpatine. Okay.
Yeah. That's right. They better, because there's no way in hell you're playing Palpatine 2, right? Is that what you're saying?
Oh no. I really tried my hardest to play that thing.
Yeah.
No young Palpy for you.
No young Palp.
Yeah, not as of yet. But no, yeah, blue villain. Like I don't know why. I just like the straightforward play of damage. I actually feel like a villain for once is a nice feeling. But other than that, that's really about it.
I like blue villain too. That's my favorite. I mean, I'll play the hell out of Talzin. I love Talzin. I love Dooku.
Talzin's cool.
I really want
more.
to.
I want more like Talzin.
Yes, and it's really fun to play the witch decks.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you really think about it too. Like right when we saw Talzin announced, we were like, how do that? 1 in 3 it has to have odd cards. No one's gonna play her.
Oh no, it's such a fun thing to build around. I hope we get more things like that in the future. I think it's awesome.
Anything that you have to where you have to build your deck differently is fun. So
we need an even deck to counter it.
Oh,
we do.
Yeah. That'll be kind of interesting. And it's got to be hero, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It has to be hero and those 0 stuff.
It can't be nearly as powerful, though. It has to be something different. All right, you guys, we're going to wrap up episode 3 of the Cantina Brawl. I want to thank our awesome host or special guest, Monk, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Wanted to give you a chance to do some shout-outs here, if you want to do any shout-outs.
Oh, no, just in general, guys, if you guys like Star Wars Destiny content and all that too, just come by if you want to Monk's Gaming Battlefield. And just special thanks to my family for supporting me as much as they do, as well as every single one of you guys that already contribute to everything in my channel. But thank you so much for everything.
Right on. And you're on live pretty much every Tuesday evening Pacific time, right?
Oh yeah, so yeah, I'm in California, so I'm live from 7:30 all the way up until I get tired, which is usually about 4 or 5 hours in on Tuesdays, and then I'm on TTS as much as I can, and I do some live gameplays from Captain Nemo Games in San Luis Obispo. That's right. If you're in San Luis Obispo, we had some of your players come out to Chico for the holiday, which was really cool. Just meeting them.
We did. And they were a lot of fun.
Yep. So shout out to Nick and Matt and come on, help me. Who's the other guy? Brandon. Awesome. Yep. All right, you guys. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Look us up on Facebook at T3 Gaming Tabletop and on YouTube. Of course, we are always posting some in real life games. We are probably not going to slow down that much this holiday. We're going to be playing this Wednesday and maybe take a week or so off, and then we'll be back right at it again. We're definitely practicing for some regionals, and there's a lot of fun decks to play right now because there's so many different configurations. Check us out on youtube.com if you don't already at T3 Gaming Podcast. And also this new podcast is already up on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify, as well as the Google Play Store. So check us out there. Again, I want to thank my guests and my co-hosts, and we will see you next time at the Cantina Brawl.